Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, this. This is an Airfix 1/72nd scale Supermarine Swift FR5. Now, the Swift was a fairly, Swift by name, Swift by nature. It's a fairly short-lived aircraft. It came into being in the mid 1950s during the Korean War. And it was basically like a fallback position for the Hawker Hunter. So if the Hunter didn't work, they would have this. Kind of interesting in a way that obviously during World War II, the Hawker Hurricane played second fiddle to the Supermarine Spitfire. And in the Korean War, it was very much the other way around. The Hawker Hunter was the main aircraft and the Swift played second fiddle to it. But we're going to build this, obviously. But we're going to do something a bit different with it. So, because what I've also got is this. Now, this is a monogram 1/24th scale IndyCar, which is in a slightly old and battered box. This is quite an old kit. And basically, you may have seen, long-time followers of me on social media, and especially my patrons, will have seen that I have actually made quite a few kit bashes of one form or another, and one of my favourite things is to take aircraft and turn them into ground vehicles. Now, one of the ones I did a little while ago, I'll put a picture up of it, was based on a 3D render that someone did of the Howard Hughes racer. It was apparently a concept that Howard Hughes had for a racing car, and the first time I saw it, I immediately thought, that looks like a Starfighter. And I had a Starfighter and I had another one of these, so I built this like racing version of it. And I had always in it, because this, you can see this one has German decals, because the kit, which was an Academy, I think, Starfighter, had German decals. So I had always intended to do like a British one as well. And so for that, we're going to use this. So let's have a quick look in the box and see what we have got. Right, we've got the instructions, which are in colour, which is quite nice. Airfix do this a lot now, and I quite like it, because what they do, just to give an example, is they'll show you to fit a piece together, and then they show you like how to, like, that's the bit you've just done, this is where it goes, sort of thing. So like in the next step, the previous step is in red, which is quite useful. So that's that. It also has a painting guide on the back, which we will not be following, and I'll tell you why in a minute. It also has this, which is quite handy, which is a guide for all of the little stencils. Again, most of those we won't be using, but we'll probably put a few on. Speaking of decals, there are variants in this kit, so as I say, some of these we'll use, some we won't, and you'll see why as we go on. And now the kit itself. Now, for some reason, this bag is open. I don't know why, because I didn't open it, but there you go. So, as usual, we have multitudes of plastic bags. That's the Canopy. This actually looks pretty good, I have to say. I'm not seeing much in the way of flashing. I dare say there'll be mould lines all over it, because they usually are. But there's quite a lot of detail on it. I mean, to be fair, the wings and a lot of that we won't use. We're going to cut those off. But yeah, it looks alright. Now, let's also just very quickly have a look at the car as well, because again, there's only very few parts of this we're going to be using. It's very, very red, as you can see. It's horrendously red. Obviously, it's got rubber tyres, which is nice. We'll be using the wheels and tyres, and what we're really after are things like the front and rear spoilers. Where's the rear one? That's the rear ones there. They give you two. So we'll use one of them, and also these suspension Wishbones, we'll be using those as well, and various other bits. But that's pretty much all we'll be using out of this kit. So, but this is quite an old kit. Now the interesting thing is, the other one of these I did was an AMT model, and it was exactly the same as this. Now this one actually, I don't know if you can see that or not. See if I can catch it in the light. See, that says monogram on it, 1989. So yeah. But I got a sneaking suspicion that AMT actually do quite a lot of reboxing, because some of you may remember that I did a video of my daughter a while ago where we painted a T-Rex, and it was an Airfix T-Rex, and I also happen to have an AMT T-Rex, and it's the exact same kit. It even has Airfix moulded on the inside of it, so they've obviously just bought the Airfix kit, put it in their own box and sold it. So I think that's what they did with this as well. But anyway, let's get on with it. Right, so I'm going to start with the cockpit as usual, but what I'm also going to do is there's various other bits that I'm going to assemble as well, for the simple reason that there's quite a lot of the inside of this that needs to be painted black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put quite a few of the sub-assemblies together, and while I'm doing that, I'll just paint them all black at the same time, because it will save a lot of time and aggravation. Right, now we've got all these various bits cleaned up, we can start sticking some of them together. Now most of the cockpit is black, but there are bits of it that aren't, notably the seat swab, so I'll do that separately. That's why I'm not going to put that in yet, but most of it is black. Right, so I've given all the bits a lick of primer. We're going to start now with some flat white XF2 for the white bits, and for the black bits we'll use XF85 rubber black. So there's a few bits we need to do by hand, as it were. So the seat swab, I'm going to use Bubonic Brown, these are Citadel colours, for the straps, and Doomball Brown for the seat swab. And then also some of these bits like the engine fan and things like that, I'm just going to dry brush with chainmail. So I'll just do this first and let this dry while I do the dry brushing. And then we'll come back and do the straps and things. Right, a little bit of paint on the brush, wipe most of it off. and then very lightly go over it. I don't even think you'll be able to see this, quite frankly, but you never know. As I've said before, I know it's in there, so... That's that bit. And what I'm going to do as well is just very, very lightly go over bits of the cockpit, just to kind of pick out some of the detail in there. Okay, now we'll do these seat straps. And a little bit of chain mail for the buckle. Like that. Okay, so I want to put the fuselage together now. I've just done a few bits off camera just to get it ready to go, and I've just been dry fitting this, and as you can probably see I've had to remove a fair bit of material to actually get the thing to fit properly, but I think I've got it to a point now where it will go together, although it's not great, I have to say. The fit really isn't all that good. There are quite a few like little locating pins and divots and things, and all they seem to do is actually get in the way and stop it from going together properly. So I've cut most of them off, and I've actually had to shave some of the side off of the cockpit, but I think we are now somewhere close. It is going to be a bit of a squeeze, but I think we can finagle it. See, it's more at the back here. It's a bit, you have to kind of like press it together to get it to go together properly, but it's not the end of the world. So let's start from the front and work our way backwards. Yeah, I think there's going to be quite a lot of clean-up and filler involved with this. But never mind, it'll be alright. We'll get there. These clothes pegs that I'm using came from the pound shop, and they're really useful because they've got like a nice spongy, like rubbery tip, so they can clamp without putting, you know, marks and things on it. I might need a bit of tape on there. Right, so after a fair bit of gnashing and wailing of teeth, that's the fuselage together. There are some gaps which will have to be filled. That's just one of those things. So we'll let that dry and turn our attention to the wings. So while the fuselage is drying, let's look at cutting the wings. So what I've done is I've just roughly put the wings together. You can see there are a few gaps and whatnot, but that doesn't matter because basically we only want a very small part of it. We basically want this bit and then a small part of the wing. So the trick is with these, I mean, normally, if possible, I like to just cut the wing straight across, but I also like to try and follow the panel lines if I can. And the problem that we've got here is the panel lines are a bit of a funny shape, because if you look, there's one suitable candidate here, and then this one here, and actually this this part here which is where the flap goes, it's actually not attached at the bottom. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the wing. I'm just going to cut one for now, and I'll cut across this panel line here and this one here, and then this back part should just come off on its own, and then we can do a test fit and try the suspension and see if it actually fits. I've got a sneaking suspicion it won't, but we'll give it a try. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to score it with a knife first, and then I'll cut it with the razor saw. I mean, you could just cut it like this, just work your way, you know, very slowly and carefully, just make repeated cuts, and eventually the wing will just fall off. But I'll use the saw just to make life a bit easier. So like that, because the thing is, there aren't any, I mean, there are corresponding panel lines on the bottom, but only for this one, but it doesn't really matter because you're not really going to see the underside of it. This is a JLC razor saw. You've seen me use this before. They are fairly expensive, but they are very, very good for this kind of thing. So, right, I'll try and keep this under the camera, but bear with, because obviously it's a tricky thing to do. I think I'll use the finer. And to be honest, it's one of these things that for what we're doing, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because you know, the nature of the beast, as it were, is that, you know, this is meant to be something that's been kind of cobbled together. So it's not the end of the world if it doesn't go perfectly. See, the tricky bit is getting this corner. I think what I might have to do is cut it like this. I mean, another thing you could do is just cut it roughly across there to get rid of most of it, and then, you know, just tidy it up afterwards. Right, that's got through the back there. That's most of it done. Right, let's cut this one. And now let's go down here. I'll have to remove a bit more of this afterwards, but we'll just see how it goes for now. Yeah, see, the trouble is, it's on the bottom here, you've got all this in the wheel well and that we've got to contend with, which is not helping. Ah, there we go. I think we're getting there. Now, hopefully we can just break that off. There we go. What was hard about that? Right, let's get rid of that. We don't need that. So I think a lot of the rest of this we can just cut off with a knife. So the trouble is, it's a very awkward angle to get into. But let me clean the rest of this up, and then we'll come back and have a look and see what it looks like. Okay, so I've cut this. I've cleaned it up a little bit. I didn't go mad with it because obviously we might have to make some changes to it, but I just cleaned it up a bit. Now I've got the rather red suspension kit out of the other one. Right, so I just want to do a test fit and see how well this goes on. Yeah, that's the top wishbone. Now the problem that we've got, and it's a fairly minor problem, but it is something to keep in mind, is the lower wishbone is part of the car. So basically we need to cut this off. When I first did one of these, I did actually toy with the idea of actually mounting it like that. But I thought that probably wouldn't have worked very well. So what I'll just do is I'll just cut this off. And it's a bit of a thing to get off because there's quite a lot of plastic there. Oh, and there's a big lump of sprue in the way. Let's move that out of the way. Right, that's one. And that's t'other. So that's our lower wishbone, and what you might need to do, depending on the shape of the fuselage, is it may need to be trimmed to fit. So I think we're going to put this, because what I want to do is put it sort of back here somewhere like this, and then that goes on the top like that, and I think that will actually work. Oh no, actually that goes at the front. Yeah, I think we'll be alright actually. And basically what you need to do is sort of trim the arms of the lower wishbone so that they will fit where you want them to go, as sort of closely to the fuselage shape as possible, because you want them to be you want this parallel to the direction of travel, if you see what I mean, to the centre line of the fuselage. So I think we might have to trim a touch more off of that one. And what you can also do, if you need to, is if we look at it from the underside, you can actually trim the ends of the legs to fit the fuselage better, so it's easier to stick it on. So, but at least we know now that the wings will work like this. So I'll cut the other wing off, and I think then what we can do is start filling in some of these gaps, fit the wings, what's left of the wings, fit the front undercarriage cover, and then start filling in some of these gaps. Right, so I've got the fuselage together. That's all gone together rather well. The wings are on. I haven't tidied it up a great deal yet, because the next thing I want to do is deal with the rather large holes in the wings, or where the wings were. Try saying that fast. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a piece of this. This is 0.25mm styrene sheet, and it's always worth keeping little offcuts and scraps like this, because you can always use them for all kinds of interesting things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut pieces to fit, and I will stick them on, cut them roughly to fit, stick them on. When they're dry, then I'll trim them off with a knife. So obviously with this being so thin, we can just use scissors and just cut a couple of pieces off like this. And some glue would help. And then what I'll do is, because I don't really want to have to try and work my way around these angles if I can avoid it, so what I'll probably do is just stick a piece on like that, and then like work my way down. So let's get that somewhere in place. And this is where your thin glue really comes into its own with things like this. Line that up with the end of that panel line. Make sure it's actually covering the whole gap, would be useful. And then see, the great thing about this styrene is because it's so thin and light, it sticks very, very quickly and very easily. So that's that piece in place, and what I'll do is I'll just work my way around and block all these in, and then show you what it looks like. Right, so that's those bits stuck on, and what I'll do is I'll just get with the scissors and just cut it roughly to shape like that. Ugh. Just talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Like that. Then we can come back in with a knife, and I need my glasses. Oh, I'm getting too old for this. Alright, and this is where it's tricky trying to do this in front of the camera, but I'll do what I can. And just basically lay the blade flat and just shave it back. Like that. You see? And we can just go all the way around like that. I probably should have put a new blade on this, it's a bit blunt. There you go, like that. And then what you can do, if you need to afterwards, is just go over it with the glue again, and just run around the edge of it, and it will basically just like meld it all together. But it should be okay. Let's do the underside, so you can get the full effect. There we go. And you know, you can sand it and everything as well, just to make sure it's a perfect fit, but that doesn't look too bad, does it? If the camera would focus on it. I'll do the other side, and then there's a couple of other little bits we can do to it as well. So now I'm going to go over it with this Mr. Dissolve putty and start trying to fill in some of these rather ridiculous gaps. Right, now I think you've probably seen me use this before. It's very good stuff. But basically, just dab it on to what you want to fill. And the great thing about it is it's very easy to clean up. And I'll show you that in a minute, because there's a little trick that you can use with this that works absolute wonders. Right, so we've got that done. A couple more little bits to do. Right, so that's that. Now, what we do is we give that a few minutes to dry, and then I'll show you a little trick that I think you're going to like. Right, this has had a few minutes to dry now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cotton bud, and I've just soaked it in isopropyl alcohol, and then what you do is you just come back in and just wipe it off like that. And you just wipe off the excess. You might need to go back over and, you know, if there's still little gaps in that, and fill it in again, but you know, I think you'll agree that's a lot easier than all of that masking and filling and sanding and everything else. You just wipe it off. So I'll get on and do the rest of this. Right, there you go. That doesn't look too bad, does it? And that took about 5 minutes, which is a lot easier than doing it the other way. I need to go back and do this top a little bit because there is a hell of a gap there, but I'll do that, and then we'll see what it looks like. Right, now this is where it all starts getting a bit tricky. So what I've just done is cut and shaped the front lower wishbone. It's not quite as straight as I would like, but I think we'll be alright. The trouble is that the underside of this aircraft is a very odd shape, and it is not conducive to to doing what I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to do now is put the brake caliper on, and then try and get the upper wishbone in place. Preferably without wrecking it. Okay, that's on. So now I've got to try and get this into place, so we'll just do a bit of a test fit and see how it goes. Right, so what I want to do is turn this out slightly. So it will be in the bottom wishbone at a bit of an angle, but it's not the end of the world because this is all hidden by the wheel. So, because what I want to do is get the top wishbone to sit as straight as possible. Something like that. That doesn't look too bad at all. Let's see if we can glue that in place. Right, nobody breathe. Yeah, that's going to work, I think. Right, now I want to leave this and let it set up before I do the other side. I want to make sure this is completely nailed in place so that I can basically match the other side to this side, which is even more fun. So I'll do that, and then we can move on to the back of it. Right, so front suspension is on and pretty much straight, which is always a bonus. So now we can turn our attention to the rear suspension. So the first part here is this, which is the lower wishbones, and it's very difficult to see on this. It's awful red plastic. But basically, what we've got on the middle of each one is there's a lug here that is used to locate it on the actual model. So they will need to go. But what I want to do first is just get a rough idea of where I'm going to put it, for the simple reason that what I want to happen in an ideal world is to have the front and rear wheels at the same height, which is not always possible, but we'll see what we can do. See, at the moment, the way that's sitting, that's a bit nose down. So I think what I'll do is I'll just snip these bits off, and what I have done in the past as well is actually moulded this slightly to fit better, like, you know, put a recess in it to make it fit better. But for now, let's just take that off and that off and see what that does for us. Right, okay, that's not too bad. Now the rear upper wishbones, which go on like that. Now I might need to put that back a bit further. That's not terrible. Right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll attach this and then put the calipers on, what we also need to do is figure out where the drive shafts need to go, because the drive shafts will basically go like that somewhere. So it's a case of drilling a hole in the side of the fuselage to one of the few pieces that can actually be mounted relatively easily, because you can just drill a hole in the fuselage and put them in. So, but let's get this bit on first. Right, what I'm going to do is just shape this slightly. Let me just trim this flat. Because you see that's obviously flat and the bottom of the undercarriage is curved. So what we do is get something suitable like a half round file and just give it a bit of a, just try and put a little bit of a concave in the middle of it, just to give it a bit better contact with the underside of the fuselage. So I'll shape this and get it in place, and then we'll come back and see what it looks like. Right, so I've just put a little bit of a concave in each one of those, and hopefully they should now fit a little better, which they do. And so what we want to do now is glue this in place. Oh, you hear that going over? Merlin. Noisy swine. That's making the roof shake. Right, that looks pretty straight to me. Okay, so now what we need to do is figure out exactly where the drive shafts need to go. So what I don't want to do just yet is actually glue these in place, because it will make it very difficult to get the drive shafts in. But it also means they're quite difficult to, they don't want to stay. The front ones, fortunately, were a lot easier because they would just sit in the grooves and stay there, which these ones won't. I think what we might be able to do actually is just kind of guesstimate it from here. These are quite handy actually if you're needing to mark things. They're Luma colours, they're non-permanent, like dry white pens, but they're very fine ones. So let's get that. I think that needs to be about there. That. There. Right, let's drill some holes. Right, so I'm going to start off using this. This is a 1/2 mil bit, and I'll use that to get it started. Like that, and then I'll switch to an appropriately sized bit and open up that hole. Like that, and that should now fit in there quite nicely, like that, you see. I'll do the same on the other side. Right, now this is the tricky bit, because obviously these drive shafts are meant to be the length to fit on the original model, so we might need to shorten them a little bit, but we'll see. So let's just pop that in there. Oh, get in there like that, and then let's see if this will actually go on. Yeah, so you probably can't really see that. That's about 1 millimeter or two too long. So what I'll do is cut the end off the drive shaft, nip a bit out of it, and then glue the end back on. Do it like that. So let's just cut this end off. So it's a nuisance having to do this, but it is what it is. Like that. And then cut about that much off, and then glue it back together again, which is always fun. Like that. Right, do the other side and then we can start putting it together. Right, so let's put that in there. And that like that. There we go. So now we need the top wishbone. Put this on like that. Now what we're going to have to do is trim this down to fit, because obviously it's got a big right angle. Oh, it's got a big right angle there, which isn't any good for our purposes. So fortunately, I don't know whether you can see that, but there's this bit in the middle here is nice and angled, so it's a case of just shaving that off until it roughly meets that angle. Right, let's see what that's like. Might want a bit more. Oh. Right, there we go, and I'll do the other side and we'll see what it looks like when it's all done. Right, so there we are, that's the front and rear suspension fitted. It all looks pretty straight actually, I'm quite pleased with that. What I'm going to do, I think, is I've got to fit the front wing and the rear wing that goes on top of the tailplane. But what I think I'm going to do is I'll fit the front wing and then I think I'll give it a coat of primer, because I think this is going to need a lot more cleaning up on the top here, and I want to just give it a coat of primer and see what it looks like. So let's get the front wing on, if I can find it. Right, so this is the front wing, and it's going to go kind of here-ish somewhere. But what I'm going to have to do is cut it into pieces and do the same again. Basically drill a couple of holes and try and match up this angle here with the angle of the nose to get a decent fit, or at least get it an even fit, even if it's pitched backwards or something, and do it like that. So let me cut this up. I'll just leave a little bit like that, and then what we do is just basically eyeball it. See, it probably wants to go about there, right at the front-ish. I think just in front of that panel line there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole and then hog it out, and then that should give us somewhere to mount this, and we'll do the same on both sides. As I say, you're trying to fit bits to a model that are not intended to go on it. So, but you know, it's all part of the fun. Right. Let's see what that looks like. Because what we can do is just nip a little bit off of here to make that fit. At the moment we are literally trying to put a square peg into a round hole. There we go. Like that-ish. Now. There we go. It's not perfectly straight horizontally, but that's all right. Let's try and make it. There we go. And I'll do the same with the other side. Right, so that is the front wing attached. Looking not too bad at all. Needs a little bit of finagling, but apart from that it's fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the canopy on, and then I'm going to give it a coat of primer so that I can see what I need to clean up on the body. So I'll do that next. So I am now just putting or starting to fit the tail spoiler, the rear wing, and I think what I'm going to do, because I want to use these, I've just cut these little bits of styrene rod to act like as a brace to go underneath it. So, and I've just been figuring out where to put them, and I think what I'm going to do, or I'm going to try to do, is I'm going to try to put them kind of together like that, and have them coming up to that point there. So I'm just going to trim these because I want them to kind of come like almost to cross over like that, if that makes sense. But I want to glue them together and glue them to the fuselage as well, and then cut them. This is a bit tricky doing this. This is why when I cut these, I deliberately cut them a few millimeters too long so that I could, you know, mess about with them and get them where I want them. So let's just trim these down a bit. Right, so let's just trim these down a bit. And to be honest, this is a bit hit and miss when I do this, and I dare say there are people that will say, oh, there's a much better way to do that, and I'm sure there is, but this is the way I do it, and so there you go. Right, so that will probably do for that one. And now I want to try and cut the other one the same. And the first cuts are actually simple because it doesn't matter like the angles don't matter, if you see what I mean. It's just when you get to do the other end, you've got to match the angle at the top to the angle at the bottom, which is slightly more tricky. Right, let's see what that's like. Where's it gone? There it is. Yeah, I think that'll do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these together, let them dry, and then I can trim them a bit underneath the thing, wing. That's one. Leave me alone. I'll do that. I'll glue these together. Right, so I've just trimmed these, and what I'm going to do now is put them on about there. Like that. Now this I need to leave to set up because I need to cut the ends while it's in situ to get this in the right place. Okay, so what I've just done, I don't know whether you can see that, but I just used the clippers and I just literally eyeballed this. So I basically just looked down like level with it and just snipped it off, and I think I've got that about right. So let's just flip that over and see if we can get this. I'm going to try and do it in a way that you can actually see what I'm doing because it's tricky, but I think that's looking not too bad at all. It's it could probably do with another fraction coming off, but I think I don't want to. What I don't want to do is cut them too short because that would be a disaster, quite frankly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this, and I'm going to allow the melting properties of the solvent to help us get these in place. Right, let's turn this over and see if it's straight. Does that look straight to you? Right, I think that's about right. Yeah, I think that'll do us. Yeah, okay, so let's leave that to dry for a few minutes. So now we've got the tail on, what I'm going to do is just rescribe some of these panel lines, and then I'm going to give it a coat of primer, and then there's one last thing I want to show you before we wrap this video up, because I think we're going to have to make this a two-parter. So let me do this. So as you can see, I've got my razor saw, and it's really awkward to do this because I can't see it very well because I've got it at a funny angle. But basically, you just follow the old panel line and join it up with the other side like that, you see. Swift visit from #1 offspring. Right, so anyway, and the same here is basically just rest it in the panel line and just push it over to join up with the other side like that. There you go. So I'll do the rest of these and then I'll give it a coat of primer. And here is our finished article. well, finished for now anyway. So the assembly is all complete. I have fitted the wheels and tyres. Just they're only loosely on there, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. But I think it's coming along quite nicely. And in the next video, we will put some paint on this little beastie and hopefully get it finished. So I hope you're all enjoying this build, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.